Liraya's feet were bare, cut, and cold as she walked through the lower levels of the human spaceport. Metal walls surrounded her, and the sky was hidden behind pipes, steam vents, and blinking red lights. Level 17 was known as the Forgotten Zone, full of shadows, waste, and broken people. She held her little sister Nemu close to her chest, wrapped in a dirty blanket she had found in a trash bin. Nemu was shaking, her small arms weak, her lips dry and cracked. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, and her cries were now soft like whimpers from a sick kitten. Liraya was only 18, but she looked much older, her cheeks hollow, her eyes tired. She had searched every corner of the level, begging for food, asking for work, even offering to clean stalls, but no one helped aliens like her. She was from a small race called the Kirel, with smooth gray skin, bright eyes, and slim frames. Most humans ignored her. Some cursed at her, and others laughed cruelly. One vendor threw old bones at her feet and said, "Chew on that alien trash." She didn't cry. Not in front of Nemu. Instead, she walked on, one slow step at a time, her head down, heart heavy. She smelled food in the air, real food. Warm food, meat being grilled, soup boiling, bread baking. Her stomach twisted painfully, and her legs almost gave out, finally. Her eyes saw something, a small food stall glowing warmly in the middle of a wide walkway. There were no customers. Around at this late hour, the smell pulled her closer like a magnet. She stood at the edge of the stall's light, clutching Nemu, staring at the steaming bowl on the counter. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Then a deep voice spoke from behind the counter. "You look like you haven't eaten in a long time." The voice belonged to a human man, tall and strong, with rough hands and a quiet face. His name was Jocks, but Liraya didn't know that yet. He had seen many things in his life: war, pain, betrayal, but something about this girl stopped him cold. She didn't answer him at first, just took a shaky step forward. I have no credits," she whispered, her voice like glass cracking. "I have nothing left. Except my body," she added, almost too quiet to hear. "You can use it. Just for one meal." Human, the words stabbed through the air. Jocks blinked, his jaw tightening. He wasn't angry at her. No, he was angry at the world that had made her say such a thing. He looked at her sister, barely breathing, small and weak. He looked back at Liraya, who stood trembling but proud, refusing to beg again. "Sit," he said softly. Liraya's eyes widened. She didn't understand. "I said sit," he repeated, pulling out a small crate to sit on. Then he turned around and filled a bowl with hot stew, thick with vegetables and chunks of real meat. He set it down in front of her and walked away without saying another word. Liraya sat slowly, like it was a trap. She looked at the food, looked at him, then at her sister. "Is this really for us?" she asked, voice shaking. Jocks didn't look at her, just said, "Feed your sister first." Liraya broke the bread in half, dipped it into the stew, and gently placed it into Nemu's mouth. The little girl chewed slowly, then opened her eyes wide and shining, and took more. Tears ran down Liraya's cheeks as she fed her. She didn't touch the food herself for a long time. Only after Nemu had eaten most of it, then she ate, fast, messy. Her hands shaking with each bite. Jocks said nothing, just watched silently from behind the stall. It wasn't pity in his eyes. It was quiet understanding when she finished. She looked up at him, confused and cautious. "Why did you feed me?" she asked. Jocks looked at her and said, "Because no one should have to trade their body for food." She stared at him, her lips trying to form words, but none came. She had been treated like dirt for so long that kindness felt like a trick. Jocks continued, "You don't owe me anything, understand?" Liraya lowered her head, nodding slowly but deep in her heart. She didn't believe him yet. Kindness always had a price, at least. That's what the world had taught her. Still, for now, her belly was full. Her sister was breathing. And the cold was a little less painful. She whispered a word she hadn't used in a long time. Thank you. And for the first time in many days, she let herself hope, just a little. Asterisk, the metal floor creaked softly under Liraya's feet as she helped Nemu into the small storage room behind the food stall. Jox had pointed toward the space and said, "You two can rest here for the night." Liraya had expected him to follow, to close the door behind them, to do what most men would do when they gave something away for free. But he didn't. He stayed outside, wiping down the counter with slow, steady hands. Liraya looked around. The room, it was small, dusty, and filled with old crates and tools. But it was warmer than the streets. There was even a blanket folded neatly in the corner. She laid it down and helped Nemu sit. Her little sister's cheeks were fuller now. After the stew, her breathing steady, Liraya touched her forehead. Then sat beside her, confused, scared, and exhausted. Minutes passed. Then Jox knocked on the side of the door. "I found some warm water and a towel." "Ah," he said, placing them gently on a crate nearby. He also placed a bundle of soft, faded clothes, not new, but clean. "Ah," he added, before walking away. Liraya stared at the door after he left, her mind full of questions. She whispered to herself, "Why is he being kind?" She wasn't used to kindness, not without a price. Still, she cleaned Nemu's hands and face first, then used the rest of the warm water to wash her own arms and neck. The towel felt rough, but it smelled of old soap. It made her feel like something more than a street rat. Nemu smiled as she laid down, and that small smile broke something deep inside Liraya's chest. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them quickly. "I'll protect you," she whispered to her sister. "No matter what." Later that night, Liraya sat at the edge of the blanket, unable to sleep. She stared at the wall, thinking about her life before the spaceport. Their planet had been ruined by war. Their people scattered, their names forgotten. She had worked in a recycling plant on another station. Long hours, low pay, no kindness. When her sister got sick, they threw them out, not worth the cost of medicine, they had said. So she had come here, hoping for something better. But things only got worse. Until now, until this strange human gave them food, warmth, and space to breathe. She didn't trust it. Not yet. Good things were always taken away. She had learned that the hard way. Outside, Jock sat beside a small heater, sharpening a knife not for violence, but for cutting meat the next day. He was quiet, thoughtful, his face hard like stone, but his eyes were soft. He thought about the girl, the way she had stood in front of him, offering her body just to feed her sister. He'd seen desperation before, but something about her made his chest ache. He'd seen soldiers broken in battle, but her spirit still stood strong. Even if her body was weak, he didn't know why, but he couldn't turn away. When the morning light filtered through the vents above, Liraya woke to the smell of food again. She stepped out slowly. Blinking in the warm light, Jox was already at the stall, grilling fresh meat, slicing bread, boiling broth. He glanced at her, then nodded. "Your sister doing better?" he asked. Liraya nodded slowly. "She slept through the night," she said, her voice still unsure. "Good," he replied, then handed her a small bowl of stew. "For you?" She looked at it, then at him. "I still don't understand," she said. "Why are you feeding me again?" Jox didn't answer right away. He looked at the steam rising from the pot, then said, "Because no one else will." She opened her mouth, but he continued. "I've seen too many people left behind. Too many just tossed out like trash." He looked at her. "You're not trash?" Her hands shook as she took the bowl. She sat on the crate again, eating slowly, this time tasting each bite. It wasn't just food. It was dignity. Jox asked gently, "What's your name?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Liraya." He nodded. "I'm Jox." There was silence between them, but it wasn't cold. After a moment, Jock said, "You can help me at the stall today if you want." She blinked, confused. "Work?" she asked. "You'd let me work?" He nodded. "I'm just one man, could use an extra set of hands." He said, "You'll earn your meals, not trade your body." Liraya looked down, tears quietly falling on her bowl. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You?" "Already did," Jox replied. "You reminded me what being human means." That day, Liraya stayed beside the stall, handing out bowls, wiping counters, and learning to smile again. She still had fears, still had doubts, but something small and fragile had started to grow inside her. Hope, and sometimes hope is enough to begin a new story. Liraya swept the counter clean with a damp cloth, her hands trembling slightly from hunger and nerves. Beside her, the food stall sizzled with fresh broth, frying meat and warm bread that Jox had started preparing for the evening. Nemu, her little sister, sat on a stool behind the stall, wrapped in an old but warm jacket Jox had given her. Her cheeks were no longer gray, and her lips carried a hint of color again. Liraya glanced at her every few minutes, making sure she was okay. It was quiet for a while, the way peaceful evenings often were in the lower levels of the spaceport. Occasionally, a customer passed by and ordered something. Always greeted by Jox's calm voice and steady hands, Liraya mostly stayed silent, watching, listening, learning. But Jox didn't seem to mind. In fact, he gave her space, like he understood she needed it. When the last customer walked off with a bowl of soup, Jox turned to Liraya and said, "Close the shutters." She did as told, her hands more steady now. "Do you and your sister have a place to go?" he asked casually, without looking directly at her. Liraya paused, her throat dry again. "No," she whispered. We usually sleep near the steam vents." He gave a slow nod, like he already expected that answer. "My storeroom is small," he said, "but warmer than steam vents." Liraya blinked, not sure if she heard him right. "You're offering another night?" she asked, confused. "Only if you want it," he said simply. "Just one night at a time." That evening, they sat on the floor of the storage room. Nemu curled up in the blanket again, fast asleep. Liraya sat against a crate, hugging her, knees to her chest. Jox sat on the other side of the room, sharpening a cooking knife on a small stone. Cute, wasn't threatening, just a habit from his past, something to keep his hands busy. Liraya studied him carefully, trying to understand. "You were a soldier," she said softly, not a question. Jox looked up, surprised. "Yeah," he replied after a moment. "Used to fight for Earth's outer colonies? Why open a food stall?" she asked. He gave a tired smile. "Because I got tired of fighting," he answered. "Feeding people felt better." Liraya didn't reply right away. Her mind was full, spinning with thoughts and fears and strange emotions she didn't fully understand. Trust, warmth, guilt, they all mixed inside her like broken pieces trying to fit together. "You don't want anything from me?" she asked quietly. Jox looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I want you to survive," he said. "That's all." She lowered her head, hiding the tears she didn't want him to see. The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, Jox stood, upstretched, and nodded toward the corner. "Blankets big enough for two." He said, "I'll sleep outside." "You don't have to," Liraya whispered. "I know," he replied. And then he left, closing the door softly behind him, alone in the room with her sister. Liraya sat in silence. She looked down at her hands, then at the sleeping child beside her. She had offered her body just for a bowl of soup, and yet this man had given her food, warmth, and safety. He hadn't touched her, hadn't even come close. She didn't know what to do with. That kindness made her suspicious, but also something else. It made her want to believe. For the first time in years, she laid down beside her sister, pulled the blanket over them, and whispered, "Maybe." Just one night of rest, and for the first time in weeks, Leraya closed her eyes not in fear, but in peace. Outside the door, Jocks leaned against the wall. Eyes open, he didn't sleep. Not really. Old habits from war were hard to break, but it wasn't just habit this time. It was protection. He didn't know who she was, what danger she might bring. But he had seen her eyes, seen the pain, the fight, the fire still left inside her. And that was enough for now. The next morning came with dim lights flickering through the cracks of the ceiling vents. Leraya woke up slowly, her muscles aching, but her mind a little clearer. She looked over and saw Nemu still asleep, breathing calmly. Then she noticed something beside the door. A small tray of warm bread, a boiled egg, and a cup of tea. Jocks had left it without knocking, without a word. Leraya stared at it, then slowly brought it to her sister. As Nemu munched happily, Leraya whispered, "He's strange, isn't he?" The child just smiled and said, "He's nice." Leraya didn't answer, but inside her heart, something shifted again. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was confusion, maybe it was both. But for now, she decided to stay one more night. Just one more. Leraya stood behind the food stall, wearing a faded apron, her gray hands moving carefully as she placed hot soup into a bowl. Jocks stood beside her, teaching her how to balance spices and adjust the heat. She was learning fast, her movements smoother than before, her voice a little stronger. The morning crowd had come and gone, leaving behind empty bowls, silent smiles, and a few credits in Jocks's jar. Nemu sat on a small chair, drawing shapes with her finger on the dusty table. Her face was brighter, her giggles soft like a bird's wings. For a moment, everything felt normal, quiet, warm, safe. But safety doesn't last long in the lower levels of the spaceport. That afternoon, as Jocks was stirring a pot, he noticed bruises on Leraya's arms when her sleeve slid up. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the marks, purple, yellow, and long-healed. Leraya noticed and pulled her sleeve down quickly. "It's nothing," she muttered, turning away. Jocks didn't press her, but later, as they cleaned up, he spoke gently. "You want to tell me where those came from?" Leraya froze, her back stiff. Then, slowly, she turned and sat on a crate, eyes on the floor. "I worked in a recycling factory," she began, her voice flat. "They gave us one meal a day, beat us when we slowed down, called us less than living." She paused, swallowing hard. "When Nemu got sick, they said she was useless, said we both were. They dumped us outside the airlock." No warning. Jocks didn't say a word, just listened. Leraya looked up, her eyes wet, but not broken. "I ran to this port, thought I could hide, find scraps, maybe beg, but it got worse here," she said, her voice trembling now. "I almost gave my body away just to get food for her." "I know," Jocks replied, his voice low. "That first night, I could see it in your eyes." Leraya wiped her face and asked softly, "Are you still going to let us stay?" Jocks looked at her like the question insulted him. "Of course," he said. "But now I know why you flinch when I knock." That night, Jocks sat alone, staring at an old photo of his squad. All lost in the last war. He didn't save anyone then. Maybe now, he could do something better. The next day felt different. Leraya smiled more. Even cracked a joke while slicing vegetables. Jocks chuckled, surprised, but pleased. They were becoming something like a team. Quiet, broken people, trying to heal through food. Even Nemu helped by handing out water bowls with a big grin. But just when peace starts to grow, danger finds a way in. That evening, two figures in gray uniforms approached the food stall. Their faces were cold, their badges marked with the symbol of Spaceport Control. One of them stepped forward, his eyes sharp and unfriendly. "We're looking for a Kirel female and a child," he said, showing a blurry image of Leraya and Nemu. Leraya froze behind the counter, her hands shaking. Jocks stepped in front of her. wiping his hands with a towel like nothing was wrong. "Don't know them," he said calmly, not even glancing back. "They were spotted on this level 2 days ago." The officer said, "Maybe," Jocks replied. "Lots of aliens around here. You sure your scanners aren't glitching again?" The officers looked around, suspicious. Nemu was hidden in the storage room, silent under a blanket. Liraya stood very still, heart pounding so loud she was sure they could hear it after a long pause. The men gave a warning. "If you see them, report it. Harboring fugitives is a crime." Jocks just nodded slowly. "Sure, I'll let you know." They left, their boots echoing down the walkway. When they were gone, Liraya sank to the floor, her body weak from fear. "I thought I was safe," she whispered. "You are?" Jocks said firmly, locking the door and pulling the shutter down. "Not if they find us again," she said, her voice cracking. "I won't let them take you," he said, eyes burning with something fierce and protectively. Liraya looked at him, confused. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you risking yourself for me?" Jocks didn't answer right away. He sat beside her, pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was a letter, old, torn, written by a child. She was an alien girl too, he said quietly, saved my life during the war. Her family hid me, fed me, even when it meant death. She didn't survive, but I did. Liraya stared at the letter, then at Jocks. "You're paying it back," she said. He nodded. Maybe too late, but still. That night, the shadows felt closer. But so did something else. Strength. Not the kind from muscle or weapons, but the kind that comes from standing together. And now, they weren't alone anymore. The metal shutters stayed down the next morning. Jocks didn't open the food stall, didn't light the grill, didn't prepare the stew. Instead, he sat at the table with a small tablet in his hand. Liraya stood beside him, nervous, while Nemu clung to her leg. "What are you doing?" Liraya asked softly. "Contacting someone I trust," Jocks said, tapping on the screen. "An old Marine friend who deals in new identities and safe routes off-world." Liraya's eyes widened. "You're helping us escape?" she asked, shocked. Jocks nodded without looking up. "They're hunting you now, and it's only going to get worse. If they find you, they'll send Nemu to a containment zone. She won't survive." Liraya's heart sank, the image of Nemu in a cold cage flashing through her mind. "But what about you?" she asked. "You'll be in danger if they find out." Jocks finally looked at her, his voice calm but firm. "I don't care," he said. "I made my choice. You're not just some strangers anymore. You're family now." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever called her that before, not even her own people. She wiped a tear before it could fall and nodded. By noon, Jocks received a message from his contact. There was a small freighter leaving in 2 days, heading toward a border colony where no one asked questions. But they needed new IDs, new clothes, and enough credits for passage. Jocks had some savings, but not enough. He sat quietly for a while, then walked into the storage room and returned with a small locked box. Inside it was a metal badge, 2 medals, and a picture of his old squad. At the bottom was a tiny cube, glowing blue. It was a security key to his ship, his old Marine drop cruiser. Parked in a hidden bay for years, Liraya watched him hand the cube to a delivery drone. "What's that?" she asked. "My last ship," he replied. "I'm selling it." Her eyes widened. "That's your only ship. Your past." "I know," Jocks said, "but you and your sister are my future." That night, Liraya couldn't sleep. She sat in the dark, thinking about what Jocks had done. The ship, the food, the risk, all for 2 broken aliens he barely knew. She stood quietly, wrapped herself in her cloak, and left the back room. Jocks wasn't sleeping either. He was cleaning the pots when he saw her shadow. "You okay?" he asked, not looking up. I can't let you sell your ship for me." She said softly. "I've made up my mind," Jocks replied. "I haven't," she said, stepping closer. Lariah took a deep breath. "I'm going to earn the credits," she said. "By myself." Jocks turned around, eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" She looked away, ashamed. "There's a district where rich men go at night," she said. "They pay for alien girls like me." Jocks's hand slammed. "The pot down? Stop," he said, voice sharp. "You think that's the only thing you're worth?" "It's all I have," she whispered. "No," Jocks said, stepping forward. "You have your mind, your heart, your strength. You're not for sale." She looked at him, angry now. "You don't understand," she said. "We've been starving, running, hiding, and now we'll drag you down too." "Then let me be dragged," Jocks replied, his voice breaking, "because if I don't help you, I'm no better than the ones who threw you out." Lariah couldn't hold back the tears anymore. She collapsed onto the stool, covering her face. Jocks knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "You don't have to fight by yourself." She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, she whispered, "Thank you, not for the food, or the shelter, or even the plan, but for believing she was worth saving." The next day, the drone returned with a box of credits and the message, "Sale complete." Jocks smiled, tossing the box onto the counter. "We've got what we need," he said, "tomorrow night. You're leaving this place." Lariah stood silently for a moment, then asked, "What about you?" "I'll stay," he said. "They won't follow you if I'm here, but no arguments," he said, smiling gently. "This is your chance to live." She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, not as a human, not as a soldier, but as something else, a protector, a friend, maybe even family. And in that moment, for the first time in her life, Lariah believed she might deserve a future. Asterisk. The spaceport glowed with blue neon under the eternal night sky. Cargo ships came and went, and the wind carried the smell of smoke, fuel, and street food. But one part of the port was different, darker, louder, and more dangerous. It was known as Red Sector, a place where the rules were loose and the people were looser. Lariah stood at the edge of that sector, her hood pulled low, her hands shaking inside her cloak. Jocks had sold his ship for her and Nemu. But she couldn't stop thinking about what he gave up. He had saved them, protected them, fed them, even called them family. And now he was giving them a future. While staying behind, she couldn't accept that. She didn't want to leave him with nothing, so, without telling him, she made her decision. She would earn the credits back fast and give him enough to buy a new ship or start again. And the only thing she had to offer was still herself. She walked into Red Sector like a ghost. Alien girls were nothing new here. Some were dressed in thin dresses, others in chains. No one noticed one more girl with sad eyes and a desperate heart. She went to a rich-looking man standing near a hovercar. "I'm Curel," she whispered. Young, clean, and quiet. He looked her up and down, smiling coldly. "You know what you're offering?" He asked. She nodded slowly, her voice quiet. "Yes," she said. "Just give me the credits first." He reached for her arm, pulling her toward the door of the car, but before he could speak another word, a powerful hand grabbed his wrist and twisted it hard. "Let her go," Jocks growled, standing like a storm in the night. The man shouted in pain, and a crowd began to form. Lariah gasped, pulling her arm back. "How did you?" Jocks didn't answer, his eyes burning with fury. "You think this is what you're worth?" he yelled. "You think this is how I want you to repay me?" Lariah stepped back, her heart pounding. I just wanted to help you, Jocks," she whispered. "You gave up everything for us." "I didn't ask you to," he snapped, his voice sharp but full of pain. "I did it because you matter. You think I'd let you throw yourself away now?" She stared at him, her face pale. I thought. It was the only way. Jocks took a deep breath, then looked at her with something softer. No, he said. It's not. You are more than what they made you believe. Then he turned to the crowd. Okay. Staring down the guards and thugs who had started watching. This girl is with me, he said loudly. Anyone who touches her answers to me. The crowd slowly faded. Disappointed that no fight had broken out, Jocks took Laria's hand and led her away. Not saying a word until they reached the food stall. He didn't yell again, didn't shame her. He just stood there, breathing hard, his shoulders tense. I was scared, Laria said softly. I wanted to give you something back. I didn't want you to end up with nothing. You gave me something already. Jocks said, turning to face her. You gave me a reason to care again. A reason to wake up, to cook, to protect something that matters. I don't need your body, he added. I need you to believe you're worth more than pain. Laria looked down, her voice trembling. I don't know how to believe that, she said. Jocks walked to the old storage crate, opened it, and pulled out the photo of his squad again. They taught me once, he said. Now I'm teaching. You? He handed the photo to her. Everyone in this picture is gone, he said, except me. I carry their memory, but it's heavy. You. You make it lighter. Laria clutched the photo to her chest, her eyes full of tears. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Jocks stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to deserve kindness, he said. You just have to accept it. That night, Laria sat beside Namu, watching her little sister sleep. The tiny girl curled under a warm blanket, hugging a stuffed toy Jocks had found in the garbage and cleaned. Laria whispered, We're going to leave soon, Namu, but I'll come back for him, I promise. Outside, Jocks stood quietly, his back against the door. He had saved her from the darkness, but she had pulled him out of it too. Neither of them said it out loud, but something strong was building between them. Not love yet, not romance, but trust. A bond deeper than blood, and bonds like that don't break easily. The day of departure came quickly. The sun never truly rose in the lower levels of the spaceport, but the lights felt brighter that morning. Jocks prepared one last meal at the food stall. Simple soup, warm bread, and clean water. Laria helped. Her hands steady now, her eyes calm. Namu sat beside the counter, swinging her feet. Healthy enough to hum a little song, Jocks packed a small bag with food and supplies, then handed it to Laria. There's enough in here for the trip, he said. Use it carefully. Laria nodded, holding the bag close. She looked down at Namu, then up at Jocks. You sure you're not coming with us? Jocks smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. If I go, they'll track the three of us together, he said. But if I stay behind, they'll think you ran alone. You'll be safe. Laria looked away, biting her lip. I don't like it, she said. I know, Jocks replied softly, but you'll live outside. A small freighter waited at Dock 42. It was old, patched with mismatched metal, but strong enough to leave the port without attention. Jocks had already paid the pilot, a quiet man with cybernetic arms and no questions. He had one rule: board fast, no delays. Laria knelt in front of Namu, fixing the scarf around her. Sister's neck, stay close to me, no matter what, she whispered. Namu nodded. Gripping her sister's hand tight, Jocks handed Laria two identity chips. New names, clean records. You're Layla now, he said. And she's Myra. Use those names until you're safe. Laria took them with shaking fingers. Will I see you again? She asked, her voice breaking. Jocks knelt beside her, placing a hand over hers. When the time is right, he said, I'll find you. You just live. Take care of your sister. And don't stop believing you matter. Laria pulled him into a hug, tight and sudden. He didn't move for a second, then slowly wrapped his arms around her. "You saved us," she whispered. "In more ways than one. You saved me too," Jocks replied. "Don't forget that." The walk to Dock 42 was quiet. Jocks stayed in the shadows, watching from afar as Liraya and Nemu approached the freighter. The pilot checked their chips, then nodded and opened the ramp. Liraya turned one last time, her eyes scanning the crowd. She couldn't see Jocks, but she whispered anyway, "Thank you." Then the ramp closed, and the ship rose into the sky. Jocks stood alone, his face unreadable, but inside something warm burned. Not regret, not sadness, but pride. He had done something good, and for once, that was enough. Weeks passed. The food stall remained closed, the shutters down. Rumors spread that the old human had left. Some said he died, others said he ran, but no one knew the truth, and Jocks preferred it that way. He had moved to another part of the city, using a different name. He worked quietly, helped quietly, lived quietly, but he kept one thing with him, a drawing. Done in childish lines, it was Nemu's, drawn on the day before the flight. It showed 3 people standing under a fake sun, holding hands, smiling. Meanwhile, on a distant colony world, Liraya stood in front of a small shop. She wore a clean dress, her skin healed, her eyes bright. Nemu stood beside her, holding a tray of bread and sweets. Together, they had opened a small food stall. Not much, but honest, warm, safe. Liraya smiled at every customer, spoke gently, laughed often. One day, a small alien girl approached the counter. She was thin, dirty, her eyes wide and scared. I have no credits," the girl said. "Only myself." Liraya's heart stopped. She saw herself in that girl, her past, her pain, her desperation. She walked around the counter, knelt down, and gently held the girl's hands. "You don't need to give anything," she said softly. "Just eat." She brought her food, sat beside her, and smiled. "You matter," she whispered. "Don't ever forget that." Far away, under a cold metal sky, Jocks sat outside a small building. He stared at the stars, wondering if they could see the same ones. He didn't need letters, or thanks, or rewards. He only needed one thought to bring peace, that somewhere out there, a girl who once offered her body for food was now feeding others with kindness. That was enough.